The dinner rush at Bella Vista was loud enough to drown out almost any cry for help, almost. Plates clattered, crystal glasses chimed, and wealthy guests laughed beneath glittering chandeliers as 28-year-old Maya Bennett, a curvy waitress with a calm smile and tired eyes, balanced a silver tray through the crowded dining room. She had learned long ago to ignore whispers about her size. Tips paid rent, not opinions. But when a terrified little girl stumbled backward into the aisle with a masked man reaching for her arm, Maya didn't hesitate. She dropped the tray, lunged forward, and wrapped herself around the child just as a gunshot shattered the restaurant's music. Glass exploded. Guests screamed. The bullet buried itself in a marble pillar inches from Maya's shoulder. The little girl trembled violently. "It's okay," Maya whispered, shielding her with every inch of her body. "I've got you." The gunman cursed and charged again. Maya reacted on instinct. Years of working in chaotic kitchens had made her surprisingly quick under pressure. She seized a heavy serving stand and slammed it into the attacker's knees. He crashed to the floor, giving the child just enough time to crawl behind her. Then silence fell. Not because the danger was over. Because every armed man in tailored black suits had suddenly pointed their weapons at the same person. The child. A voice as cold as winter sliced through the panic. "Stand down." The restaurant froze. From the private dining room emerged a man whose presence seemed to steal the air itself. Matteo De Luca, the billionaire mafia boss whose name was spoken in whispers across continents, walked forward in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His expression never changed, yet seasoned bodyguards lowered their eyes as he approached. The frightened child looked up. "Daddy?" Relief flickered across Matteo's face for only a heartbeat before his usual control returned. His gaze shifted to Maya. She expected gratitude. Instead, she found herself surrounded by armed security. One guard roughly reached for her wrist. "You touched the boss's daughter." Maya pulled her arm back. "I protected her. You could have been part of the attack." "I could have run," she answered steadily. "I didn't." The room grew impossibly quiet. Most people avoided looking Matteo De Luca in the eye. Maya met his stare without arrogance or fear, only quiet certainty. His daughter tugged gently on his sleeve. "Daddy, she saved me." Matteo studied the waitress whose uniform sleeve was stained with blood from a shallow cut on her arm. She hadn't asked for applause. She hadn't tried to impress anyone. Even now, she stood between his daughter and every drawn weapon. "Interesting. What's your name?" he asked. "Maya." "You realize protecting my daughter may have painted a target on your back." She nodded. "I realized that the moment I stepped in. And yet you did it anyway. Some children don't get a second chance." For the first time in years, Matteo found himself unable to predict someone standing before him. He took one slow step closer. "I don't trust coincidences," he said. "So here's your test." He motioned toward the restaurant exit, where frightened guests were being evacuated under heavy guard. "Walk away now and you'll never see me again." Maya looked down at the little girl still clutching her hand with desperate fingers. Then she gently squeezed the child's hand instead of letting go. "I'm not leaving her while she's terrified." A faint smile almost touched Matteo's lips before disappearing. "Good," he said. He turned to his security chief. "She comes with us." Outside, black armored SUVs screeched to the curb as distant gunfire echoed through the night. Hidden snipers scrambled across neighboring rooftops, and one of Matteo's men shouted into his radio. "They're coming back." Before Maya could even ask what was happening, a powerful hand guided her toward the armored convoy, and a red laser sight settled silently over her heart. The armored SUV roared through the city as bullets ricocheted harmlessly off reinforced steel. Maya sat beside Matteo's daughter, Sophia, whose tiny fingers refused to let go of her hand. Outside, flashing lights painted the rain-soaked streets in streaks of red and blue. Inside, silence ruled. Matteo never looked away from the road ahead. "You should be frightened," he finally said. "I am." His dark eyes shifted toward her. "You don't sound frightened." "My voice doesn't change what I'm feeling." For the first time, Matteo saw something rare, not courage born from recklessness but calm forged through hardship. The De Luca estate looked less like a mansion and more like a private kingdom. Towering iron gates, marble courtyards, armored guards and priceless artwork surrounded every hallway. Yet the most unexpected sight awaited Maya in the breakfast room the next morning. Sophia refused to eat. The chefs pleaded. The housekeeper negotiated. Nothing worked. When Maya quietly carried a simple plate of pancakes decorated with fresh berries into the room, Sophia's eyes brightened. "You made these?" "I helped," Maya smiled. Within minutes, the little girl was laughing between bites. The room fell silent. Even Mateo paused in the doorway. His daughter hadn't smiled like that since her mother's death nearly 3 years earlier. "You weren't hired as a nanny," his security chief Victor muttered. "I wasn't trying to be one." "Then stop acting like family." Maya simply cleared the dishes without answering. Mateo noticed. She never argued to prove herself. She let her actions speak. Although she had entered the estate as a protected witness, Maya refused to spend her days doing nothing. She soon noticed the household staff struggling with inventory records. Expensive supplies disappeared almost weekly, invoices didn't match deliveries, and no one seemed able to identify the losses. "May I see the accounting files?" she asked the estate manager. He laughed. "A waitress wants to audit DeLuca finances? I studied forensic accounting before life became expensive." His smile faded. Within 2 hours, Maya had uncovered months of duplicate invoices, shell vendors, and manipulated payment records worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. She carefully highlighted every suspicious transaction without accusing anyone. When Mateo reviewed her findings that evening, even his veteran financial advisors stared in disbelief. "You found this in one afternoon?" one asked. "I only followed the numbers." Mateo closed the folder. Most people sought his approval. Maya sought the truth. "You've saved my organization from a silent theft," he said quietly. She shrugged. "It wasn't difficult." His lips almost curved. For everyone else, apparently it was. Not everyone welcomed her growing importance. Victor watched every conversation she had. Several senior employees whispered whenever she entered a room. "She's just the overweight waitress. She'll make one mistake. The boss is only keeping her because of Sophia." Maya heard every word. She answered none of them. Instead, she continued helping wherever she could, treating guards, chefs, accountants, and cleaners with the same respect. Gradually, the staff began greeting her by name. Something inside the estate was changing. So was Mateo. Without realizing it, he started asking whether Maya had eaten, whether she was resting, whether anyone had bothered her. The concern irritated him. He had built an empire by trusting no one. Yet every instinct insisted she was different. Late one rainy evening, Maya returned a misplaced ledger to the accounting office. The lights were off. A voice echoed from behind the half-open door. "The shipment moves tomorrow." Another answered in a whisper. "DeLuca suspects nothing." Maya froze. Carefully peering through the narrow gap, she recognized Victor handing a sealed envelope to a stranger wearing the insignia of the Romano Syndicate, DeLuca's deadliest rival. Before she could retreat, her elbow brushed against a metal filing cabinet. Clang. The room went silent. Victor slowly turned toward the doorway. "I know someone is there." At that exact moment, Maya's phone vibrated. A private message appeared on the screen from an unknown sender. "Run. They're watching you too." Victor lunged toward the doorway just as Maya bolted into the dim hallway, her heartbeat pounding louder than the thunder outside. She didn't dare look back. The anonymous warning echoed in her mind. "They're watching you too." Before she could reach the grand staircase, every light inside the estate went black. The emergency alarms screamed to life. Then came the first explosion. The blast shattered the East Wing's glass corridor, raining crystal across polished marble. Guards shouted into their radios as gunfire erupted beyond the front gates. "They're inside." They breached the perimeter. Mateo's command echoed through the chaos. "Protect Sophia." Masked gunmen poured into the mansion from 3 separate entrances, firing suppressed rifles. Smoke grenades rolled across the floor, swallowing priceless artwork and terrified staff in thick gray clouds. One attacker spotted Maya. There she is. He wasn't aiming to kill. He was aiming to capture. 2 men rushed her from opposite sides, but before they could reach her, Mateo appeared from the smoke with frightening precision. 2 controlled shots rang out. Both attackers collapsed. He grabbed Maya's wrist. "Stay with me. I'm not leaving Sophia." His eyes locked onto hers for a brief second. "I knew you'd say that." They sprinted toward the secure family wing, where Sophia was already being escorted through a reinforced corridor. Just as relief began to settle, another explosion ripped through the ceiling. Concrete crashed down. One of Mateo's senior guards was pinned beneath a massive marble beam. Blood spread rapidly across the floor. Another guard shouted in panic. "He's bleeding out." Everyone looked toward Mateo. Mateo looked toward Maya. "You studied forensic accounting," he said. "I also completed emergency trauma certification while working night shifts at the hospital cafeteria. I never finished medical school, but I know how to stop someone from dying. Then do it. Without hesitation, Maya dropped beside the injured guard. She ignored the gunfire echoing outside and focused only on the wound. A fragment of shattered stone had severed an artery in his thigh. "Pressure bandages," she shouted. No one moved. "They're in the emergency cabinet," she barked again. This time, 3 guards sprinted to obey. Using belts, torn fabric, and professional precision, Maya improvised a tourniquet, stabilized the wound, and slowed the bleeding before shock could claim him. "Keep him awake," she instructed calmly. "If he loses consciousness now, we'll lose him." The estate physician arrived moments later, examined her work, and stared in disbelief. "You saved his life." Across the room, Mateo silently watched her stained hands. She hadn't frozen. She hadn't panicked. She had saved one of his men while everyone else was reacting. For the first time in years, the feared head of the DeLuca Empire felt something unfamiliar. Trust. By dawn, the attack had been repelled. Several attackers lay captured. Others had escaped. The mansion bore scars of war, but Sofia was safe. Later that evening, Mateo invited Maya onto the quiet rooftop terrace overlooking the glittering city skyline. A private violinist played softly somewhere below as warm lanterns flickered against the cool night air. Without a word, Mateo handed her a velvet box. Inside rested an elegant platinum bracelet, its center adorned with a delicate compass crafted from white diamonds. She looked up. "I can't accept something this expensive. It's not payment." "Then what is it?" "A reminder." She frowned. "Of what?" "That no matter how dangerous my world becomes." His usually steady voice softened. "You should never doubt your worth." Maya's eyes glistened. "I've spent most of my life trying not to take up too much space." Mateo took one slow step closer. "Don't ever make yourself smaller for anyone." The words settled into the silence between them. "They've underestimated you because they judged your appearance," he continued quietly. "I won't make that mistake." For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The distance between them seemed to disappear. Then Mateo gently brushed a loose strand of hair away from her face, his fingers lingering just long enough to make her breath catch. Before either of them could say another word, dozens of security alarms blared across the estate. Victor's frantic voice exploded through Mateo's earpiece. "Boss, Sofia's gone, and someone left a message." Mateo's expression turned to ice. "What message?" Victor swallowed hard. "It says, 'Return the waitress or your daughter dies.'" The ransom message arrived with impossible precision. "Return the waitress within 24 hours, or your daughter dies." Mateo crushed the phone in his hand. "No." The single word carried enough force to silence the entire command room. "They don't get Maya." Every captain around the table exchanged uneasy glances. Never before had the head of the DeLuca syndicate openly chosen an outsider over strategy. To many, Maya was still just the plus-size waitress whose arrival had been followed by bloodshed. Victor spoke carefully. "Boss, if they only want her." Mateo's icy stare cut him off. "They took my daughter." A dangerous calm settled over the room. "They're getting neither." The following evening, despite the crisis, Mateo attended the annual DeLuca Foundation charity gala. Canceling would signal weakness to every rival syndicate watching. The grand ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers. International diplomats, CEOs, politicians, and powerful crime families mingled beneath towering floral arrangements. Women shimmered in couture gowns while men wore custom Italian tuxedos. Conversation stopped as Mateo entered. Then every eye shifted to the woman walking beside him. Maya. Gone was the restaurant uniform. She wore an elegant midnight blue designer gown that celebrated, rather than concealed, her beautiful curves. A diamond bracelet, the compass Mateo had given her, sparkled softly beneath the lights. She walked with quiet confidence, refusing to shrink herself despite hundreds of judging eyes. Whispers rippled through the ballroom. "That's the waitress? She's stunning. I thought she was just temporary." One socialite smirked. "Interesting charity project." Before Maya could answer, Mateo calmly offered her his arm. "She walks beside me." The ballroom fell silent. Not behind him. Not after him. Beside him. For the first time, every powerful family present understood exactly where she stood. The gala transitioned into a private business summit attended only by trusted allies. Financial reports appeared across enormous digital displays. One executive confidently announced projected shipping profits. Maya frowned. "Those numbers don't balance." Several men chuckled. The executive smiled politely. With respect, these calculations are rather complicated. She remained calm. No. She stepped toward the screen. The insurance adjustments are duplicated. The shipping manifests were altered after approval. Someone is moving money through disaster recovery accounts. Her fingers flew across the tablet. Within minutes, hidden transactions worth millions appeared before everyone. Silence. An elderly financial advisor slowly removed his glasses. She's right. Another auditor checked the files. So is she. The room erupted. Someone inside the organization had been quietly financing Romano operations for months. Former critics suddenly couldn't meet Maya's eyes. Matteo looked at her with unmistakable pride. I asked you to stay, he said before the entire council. It appears I underestimated how valuable that decision would become. Respect spread through the room far faster than fear ever could. Hours later, the celebration ended. Luxury cars streamed through the estate gates under heavy security. Rain fell across the courtyard. Maya paused. Something felt wrong. Where's Sophia's favorite driver? She asked. No one answered. Instead, Victor approached carrying a sealed envelope. They found another ransom instruction. Matteo reached for it. Too late. Victor smiled. A cold, unfamiliar smile. Gunfire exploded from the surrounding rooftops. Hidden snipers shattered windows as armored trucks burst through the front gates. Explosions ripped apart security barriers while masked mercenaries flooded the estate. It's an inside job, someone screamed. Victor drew a concealed pistol. He wasn't aiming at Matteo. He fired directly at Maya. Matteo moved without thinking. He threw himself between them. The bullet tore into his shoulder instead. Chaos erupted. Before Maya could reach him, two mercenaries seized her from behind, forcing a hood over her head. She fought with everything she had, driving one attacker backward with a sharp elbow before another restrained her arms. As they dragged her toward a waiting helicopter, she caught one final glimpse of Matteo struggling to stand despite the blood soaking through his suit. Their eyes met across the burning courtyard. Maya, he roared. She reached toward him. Then the helicopter lifted into the storm. Kneeling on the rain-soaked marble with blood running down his arm, Matteo watched the woman he had sworn to protect disappear into the darkness. For the first time since building his empire, the most feared mafia boss in Europe realized that power meant nothing when the person who had become his greatest strength was gone. The helicopter disappeared into the storm, but Matteo De Luca didn't waste a second grieving. He went to war. By sunrise, every De Luca safe house had become a command center. Armored convoys rolled across the city, private drones filled the skies, and elite security teams swept through warehouses, ports, and abandoned factories owned by the Romano syndicate. Every ally Matteo had ever protected answered his call. This isn't about territory anymore, Matteo said, his wounded shoulder wrapped in a blood-stained bandage as he faced the heads of the 5 families. This is about my daughter, and the woman who saved her. Anyone standing with Romano stands against me. For the first time in decades, the city's criminal underworld united behind one man. Deep inside an abandoned shipyard, Maya sat restrained inside a steel office overlooking rows of shipping containers packed with stolen weapons. Victor entered with a smug smile. You should have stayed a waitress. Maya met his gaze without fear. You betrayed a little girl. I chose the winning side. He placed a laptop on the table, revealing the De Luca financial network. When Matteo attacks, his accounts will be frozen, his supply routes exposed, and every ally will abandon him. Victor underestimated one thing. The waitress was still the forensic accountant who had uncovered his theft. As he stepped away, Maya quietly memorized the access codes reflected in the laptop screen. Using a broken bracelet clasp hidden inside her sleeve, she freed one hand, reached the keyboard, and rerouted millions in false transactions into dummy accounts she'd secretly created during her earlier investigation. At the same time, she transmitted the shipyard's exact location through the compromised financial server, disguising it as routine banking traffic. Matteo's operations center immediately detected the signal. One message flashed across every tactical display. Found her. Minutes later, explosions thundered across the docks. The De Luca assault had begun. Gunfire echoed between towering cargo containers as armored vehicles smashed through the main gates. Smoke covered advancing guards while helicopters circled overhead. Matteo led the charge himself. Nobody could stop him. Victor dragged Maya toward the roof where Sophia was being held beside a waiting helicopter. One more step, Victor shouted, pressing a pistol against Sophia's head, and they both die. Matteo lowered his weapon. The battlefield fell silent. Victor laughed. You built an empire, and you'll lose everything because of them. Matteo looked at Maya. Then at his frightened daughter. I can rebuild an empire, he said steadily. I cannot replace the people I love. Those words shattered the illusion that power mattered more than family. Victor pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. His gun had been disabled. While everyone watched Matteo, Maya had quietly removed the magazine moments earlier when Victor forced her toward the helicopter. She drove her shoulder into Victor's chest, sending him stumbling backward. Matteo closed the distance in seconds, disarmed the traitor, and ended the fight with one precise strike. Around them, Romano's remaining soldiers surrendered. The syndicate collapsed before sunset. Justice had finally won. Several months later, the De Luca estate no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like home. The gardens bloomed with white roses as family, friends, and loyal allies gathered beneath the warm afternoon sun. Maya walked toward Matteo wearing an elegant ivory gown that celebrated her curves with grace and confidence. She no longer hid herself from the world. She never would again. Matteo took her hands. You once risked your life for a little girl you didn't know. He smiled softly. Then you saved my people, my empire, and me. His voice grew quieter. You've always been enough, Maya. You never needed to become someone else to deserve love. Tears filled her eyes. I spent years believing I had to make myself smaller to fit into other people's lives. He gently brushed away a tear. You were never meant to shrink. I love you, she whispered. I've loved you longer than I was willing to admit, he answered. They exchanged rings as Sophia beamed with happiness. When the applause faded, Matteo turned toward the gathered families. My wife is no longer my guest. He intertwined his fingers with Maya's. She is my equal, my most trusted advisor, and the queen beside whom I will build our future. Cheers echoed through the estate. Together, they transformed the De Luca Empire into an organization built on loyalty, justice, and opportunity, ensuring that strength would never again come at the expense of compassion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Matteo wrapped an arm around Maya while Sophia slipped her small hand into theirs. For the first time, they weren't surviving. They were finally home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a comment telling us your favorite moment, like the video, share it with fellow romance lovers, and subscribe for more unforgettable Mafia romance stories every week.